It's always a very interesting experience. When the first volume came along, we didn't know anything about it. And China's political discourse is very, very different. And it is really difficult to express some ideas in a way that makes them accessible for an English-speaking audience. One of the important elements is what China calls party building. If you say some party building to an English speaker who doesn't know anything about China's political structures and processes, it doesn't mean anything. I prefer the expression strengthening the party's political base. It's still not clear exactly what it means, but the words strengthening the party's political base in English actually communicate something. I think the most important thing that it taught me about China's political system, about Xi Jinping thought, started as early as the first book. So it covers things like the economy, it covers society, it covers the environment, it covers the China's international diplomatic effort and international affairs. So it's not a whole lot of different ideas in different fields, and I think it's very important to understand the governance of China in these terms. I think that there has been an improvement in terms of China's mainstream media's ability to communicate with a global audience. But I think it's still far too much directed to China's formal political discourse. And one of the fundamental problems that I see is that China, in its international communication, it puts almost all its emphasis on China's formal political discourse. And China's formal political discourse has a very, very narrow audience. And from the perspective of the mainstream media, they're still reflecting the views and they're still adopting the approach and they're still adopting the style and the tone and the language of China's formal political discourse. So China has to find different and better ways of presenting its argument. And the mainstream media has to be part of that. But in order to do that, they have to develop a style and a tone that is different from the formal political discourse. Speaking more broadly, China also has to find a lot more channels of communication. There are many, many more channels of communication available now, specifically movies. China is really, really good at making blockbuster movies. You've got the fantasy ones like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, House of the Flying Daggers. You've got historical ones like Red Cliff, and you've got modern ones like Lake Changjin. I mean, in the past 10 years, how many big movies has China made actually targeting a Western audience and trying to tell China's story? The answer is, so far as I am aware, zero. And that's a big opportunity. So there's one pillar that can be added. Social media. The vast majority of ordinary people nowadays, they get their information and they form their views from social media. And what China needs is a strategy that brings all these channels together, that plans how they're going to be used and uses them effectively. Young people are a specific target audience. One of the strengths of young people is that they have not spent years listening to anti-China propaganda. So they haven't formed the hostile view to China that many older people have. So you need to talk to them and you need to turn them into friends. You need to talk to them through people that they can identify with about things that they're interested in. And there's a good example of that that's happened this year, the Winter Olympics. Some very successful Chinese athletes in fashionable sports that young people relate to, like snowboarding. And you need to think about that, and you need to build a strategy using people like the young Chinese athletes as ambassadors to communicate with young people outside of China, and as I say, turn them into friends before somebody else has had a chance to turn them into enemies.